Alright guys, what is going on? Welcome back to the channel. It may not look like it out here, but it is goddamn cold. And whenever it's cold, it's really difficult for me to flow properly. My voice gets stifled, you name it. So we're going to shoot a video, we're going to do our best, and we'll cover a few topics. I just wanted to start off this video by saying that I reviewed yesterday's video, and it was just subpar. To some extent, I don't even know why I posted it. There were certain things that I was trying to get across that just did not come out properly. I'm going to leave the video up, but every once in a while, ladies and gentlemen, my content, it just suffers quality a little bit. But I guess that's just how it is in life. Sometimes you hit the nail on the head and sometimes you don't. But there's a few things that I want to clarify in this video that I didn't do a very good job of in yesterday's video. But before that, I want to start off by saying thank you to everyone who went over to my BitChute account and became a subscriber. I think I have like 15 subscribers right now. That may not sound like a lot, but to me, I'm happy with that. I told you guys that if I got 10 subscribers, I would start making BitChute exclusive content. So either today or tomorrow, probably tomorrow, I'm going to start shooting some private BitChute exclusive videos where I don't have to watch what I say, where I don't have to worry about the ridiculous censorship. You know, nowadays being a content creator, if you go outside the box that they want you to be in, you kind of have to look over your shoulder, metaphorically speaking, and kind of always sit on one ass cheek. You can never really calm down and do what you want to do, and that's really something that's a huge hindrance to people who are creative. When you have to keep a mental inventory of how you have to create things, when you have to create within a certain set of parameters, it really hinders the flow of your work. So again, BitChute, Sacred Serpent on BitChute. Please, if you have not already done so, become a subscriber so that you can get a constant feed of my work, my new work. I'm currently backing up over 600 videos. All my Sacred Serpent YouTube content is being backed up onto the BitChute account. So with that all aside, let's get into the nitty-gritty of what I want to talk about in this video. I talked yesterday about how humanity is in a fallen state. And what I mean by that, folks, is that we've been taken out of alignment and we've largely participated with that process. We do things here in this world that are completely against against morals, if you will. We live very selfish lives. We engage in gluttony, and most people have a very limited worldview. Most people's lives revolve around themselves, their families, and just their immediate friends. And in my opinion, this is a huge flaw. You may call me a overthinker, but in my opinion, you're an underthinker. And I think that we should always strive to be our best at everything we do. You may call me an extremist or an elitist for saying that, but I don't think there's anything wrong with a little elitism in your life. I think that that's one thing that many people are lacking. Try peppering your life with some elitism, and that's a kind of a horrible word. There's such a negative stigma behind it, but try peppering your life with the seasoning of perfection. Try to perfect the things that you do in life. Why do we settle for suboptimal kind of just mediocre results? And why do we settle with suboptimal, mediocre, ways of living? If we improve our way of living, folks, if we start changing and tweaking the things in our life that are out of alignment, once those things get into alignment, and we've talked about this in prior videos, you start to access the wheel of momentum. In the wheel of momentum, and I talked about this in a recent Patreon video, the wheel of momentum, the friction of that ignites the inner lamp of health. And the inner lamp of health, ladies and gentlemen, if you get that lamp burning bright enough, it will light your way, metaphorically speaking. It will shield you. And lights, ladies and gentlemen, whether you believe it or not, are shields of sorts. I mean, think about it. If you're in a cave or a dungeon without a light, you're probably not going to last that long unless you get lucky. But if you have a lamp or a light in that same dungeon, suddenly you can see what's in front of you. You can watch your step. You can see if there's any enemies or creatures that are coming after you. lamps are shields in that regard. Kind of like how in Lord of the Rings, I can't remember if it was Sam or Frodo, that elvish queen gives one of them that vial, that blue kind of aquamarine vial of liquid that can be used as a light. And I believe Frodo ends up using that against Shelob the spider. I think that's what its name was. But again, that's I don't even know why I brought that up, but kind of trying to paint a picture here. Lights are shields. And through your actions, you create friction. Friction, in this case, is symbolic of your continued action. The more you get the momentum going, the more friction you create. And through friction, you spark the flame of health, that which if you kindle properly and if you care for the flame properly and you keep the flame within the proper parameters so that it can grow bigger into a fire, and that's a metaphor for you continuing to do what you need to do to maintain and grow in your health, you can create a flame big enough to stay lit for the duration of your life. But it's all dependent upon your actions. And through the flame or the lamp of your health being ignited, folks, you can access the flame of gnosis. Gnosis, nirvana, samadhi, enlightenment, you name it, are intimately connected. These higher states of consciousness are intimately related to radiant states of health. In fact, the spearhead, if you will, or the tip of the spearhead of health is enlightenment. We were designed to be healthy, enlightened individuals with our Merkaba actually working, folks, with our assemblage points in the right positions. Imagine that. We weren't designed to live in a realm of disease and death and misfortune and loss and chaos and turmoil. Regardless of what you may believe, and I know for many people that's hard to believe, we live in a culture of death, ladies and gentlemen. Everything has been flipped upside down, and that's what I mean when I say that we are in a fallen state. Earth, humanity, the entire fucking experience here has been turned upside down. And we are currently living in a suboptimal state that many people are misinterpreting as the human experience. And what I mean by that is many people think that this is what life is about, suffering. Now you can fall into all of that religious how would I explain it? You can buy into this idea that life is about suffering and yada yada yada, and you can back that up with religious quotes and all this other nonsense. But at the end of the day, everybody wishes that the world was in a more pristine, perfect state. And we have every single tool and then some to create paradise Earth. But the New World Order is here, ladies and gentlemen, and they've brainwashed you since day one. And they've turned you into a gibbering, demonic fool, a knuckle-dragging fool. And I'm not talking about my subscribers. I'm talking about the world at large. And you may think I sound like a judgmental prick. I don't give a shit. I really don't. We have got to be honest about the situation here in life. And I don't care if you think I sound mean. I really don't. The actions of humanity are far worse than my judgments towards them. Get real. You've got to get rid of the New Age poison, and you've got to start looking at things for what they are. Stop sugar coating shit. It will never get you anywhere. It hasn't gotten humanity anywhere. That's for damn sure. We are an overly tolerant species. We tolerate way too much crap, way too much of this suboptimal nonsense. There's been green technologies, ladies and gentlemen, free energy technologies, and there's been ways to completely clean up the oceans with mushroom technologies, etc. These have been around for a very long time, but they don't make money. And the New World Order wants to keep us in a state of continued disharmony. They keep us they keep us disharmonic enough to be manageable, but not disharmonic enough or out of alignment enough to be completely broken. And what I mean by that is we're about 2 notches above being just total wrecks. Total, just out of alignment individuals. They keep us in a state of structured imbalance where we live paycheck to paycheck, where life is very stressful. You name it. So we can escape all this bullshit But it starts with us, and we talked about this in yesterday's video and many of my other videos. We start off deleting the bullshit, deleting the Archon's influence, deleting all the bullshit from the New World Order and the mind control and the poisoning. We delete all this stuff through learning to doubt all of our thoughts, because our thoughts are working against us. 99.999% of your thoughts right now are lies. And I know that may sound kind of hard to believe, and I know that may get some of you upset when I tell you that your mind is not even your own and that it's working against you. Now, I've given multiple examples over the years of how this is the truth, that your mind is not your own, and I've even given you very simple exercises that you can do immediately. For instance, I'm going to give you an exercise right now that you can do. You can pause the video after I give you this exercise, and you can go do it, and you can come into contact with exactly what it is I'm talking about. And you can be a witness, and you can tell me what happens. How about that? So, go into a room, turn the lights off, and get it as dark as possible. Sit in the room, get as comfortable as you can, and try to enter into a state of non-thinking, where you do not have any thoughts. Try to remove your thoughts from, the feelings of your body, and your thoughts are intimately connected to, being able to perceive your body. Your mind is. So try to just enter into complete emptiness and non-thinking. And at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, try to, while you're doing this, not move an inch. Try to keep your body frozen, and try to keep your mind completely empty. Try to do that for 5 to 10 minutes. And more often than not, you will come into contact with a constant, perpetual stream of chatter, of emotions, of images, of appetites, you name it. Now, the very fact that you can sit back behind this chatter and observe it means that you are observing something that is not actually yours. It is being fed into your mind like a radio station playing music. Now, you've got to start asking yourself, well, if I'm not generating this chatter, where the hell is it coming from? That's an entirely different video unto itself. And this voice, or these voices in this chatter, ladies and gentlemen, is largely influenced by a negative entity that I like to call the Archon. Some people may refer to it as Satan or Mara or Set or Seth. I'm not sure. There is an entity in this dimension that is seeking to deceive people and possess people. And don't try to tell me that you aren't possessed if you have this stuff moving through your mind, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm going to explain to you exactly how the possession takes place. And this is not for the faint of heart. Many people want to think that spirituality and getting conscious is just about how many tarot decks they have and how many angel cards they pull every morning, and the dolphin statues and the incense that they burn. We've got to get out of this, ladies and gentlemen. There's much more going on than what most people will ever understand. We have got to regain perceptual fluidity. We've got to reposition the assemblage point. Now, where the hell was I going with that? Excuse me. I've got my neighbors peeking at me and people making noise off in the distance. I was going to explain how the possession takes place. Here's how the possession takes place, ladies and gentlemen. At a young age, you came into this world and you got thrown into a situation where you constantly had to do things, tasks, obligations. This is known as school. I don't want to be repetitive in this video, so go watch my other videos if you want to learn more about the education system. I go deep into it and explain how there's so much mind control in school, it's absolutely ridiculous. But because you get thrown into a situation where you have to interact with a ton of people at a young age, and you have to start doing all these tasks, and you have all these obligations, you never really learn to safeguard your mind. You never really learn how to create a mental inventory for yourself. You never really learn how to breathe properly. And because of that, because you don't learn how to breathe properly, you don't really have control over your bodily functions in your mind. Breath and the mind are intimately connected, ladies and gentlemen. But that's besides the point. Long story short, you were never taught how to live properly at a young age. And because of that, you interacted with the world at a young age, and you developed a set of beliefs based on your ignorant, how would I explain it? It's kind of hard to explain. Unfortunately, I have so much in my mind and I often can't get it out properly. Because of your limited worldview and your view of yourself, you just started to absorb information from the world around you, and it led to beliefs. You created beliefs largely because of school. School teaches you how to think, how to feel, how to believe, you name it. These all affect the subconscious mind, and you kind of create your own prison cell for yourself based on what you learn in these education systems. Now, on top of that, you learn to create an internal dialogue. You start to talk to yourself internally based on all of the stuff that you experience at these schools. Now, this dialogue, for most people, exists behind what I like to call the front of the mind. It exists behind the curtain of the front of the mind. The front of the mind is the part of the mind that we use when we are doing mundane things. It is largely associated with one thing: survival, reproduction, and mundane-oriented things like school, you name it. It's a very small, tiny fraction of our overall potential, but it's what we use the majority of our life. I explained this in a video titled Your Thoughts Are Mind Control Installations. Watch that if you want to learn more about the front of the mind. Again, I don't want to be repetitive, you name it. So you don't really hear the internal dialogue because it exists behind the curtain of the front of the mind, but it generates emotions and has a tendency through a few different processes to bleed into the front of your mind. So even though you can't hear the dialogue per se, it's still affecting how you think consciously. Because what's behind the front of the mind is connected largely to your beliefs, and your beliefs largely dictate your internal dialogue. This is all a multiple part. This is all a puzzle, if I can speak today, Jesus Christ. This is a puzzle with multiple moving parts. It is not something that is easy to explain in just one sentence, so bear with me. So you create an internal dialogue based on the bogus belief systems that you acquire from going through school. Now, on top of that, ladies and gentlemen, there is, in my opinion, based on my meditations, my experiences with Kundalini, my interactions with my light body, the angelic kingdom, you name it, I have come to realize that there is a negative, evil force with a king, if you want to call it that regulates and sits over this evil force, and I like to call this entity the Archon, or the Demiurge. Now, this particular entity projects its thoughts, emotions, etc. into the collective consciousness. And it is an omnipresent, omnipotent entity. A master magician, if you will, that gets into your mind. I don't know if you guys can hear those birds. This force gets into your mind and creates an internal dialogue. Now, again, because you were never taught to develop a self-defense system mentally at a young age, you learn at a young age to identify with these thoughts that are being projected into your mind from the Archon. You learn to think that they're your own thoughts. And on top of that, you have your own internal dialogue that was generated from the false belief systems that you developed while you went through the glorified FEMA camp that we call education, school. School teaches you what to believe, how to believe, teaches you how to interact with the world in a very physical way. You learn to look at things, you learn to perceive the world as just hard objects. You don't get taught the energetic truths about things, and that's just the absolute 100% unadulterated truth. But so you learn to identify with these projections into your mind, or in your mind. That's how the possession takes place, ladies and gentlemen. You get deceived into thinking that an entity's thoughts are your own thoughts, and because of that, you now live through the eyes of the Archon. And because you have mistaken its thinking processes and its whatever it's projecting into you, because you've learned to mistake those particular qualities as your own, it now lives inside of you. and it robs your energy. Now you may be wondering, how does it rob your energy? By getting into your mind, ladies and gentlemen, it starts to manipulate your emotional field. Because more often than not, the internal dialogue that the Archon projects into your consciousness is a very downright disgusting one that makes you feel guilty and depressed and worried, anxious, you name it. There is more mental illness now than there ever fucking was. So by you mistaking its thoughts, feelings, emotions, appetites, etc. as your own, because they are more often than not of an evil nature, a good-hearted person becomes miserable carrying around these thoughts and feelings, etc., that they actually think are their own thoughts. And because of that, the emotions stimulate the energy field, and you start to bleed out your energy through your energy field like an electrical stove. When the burner gets too hot, it becomes red hot and the heat emanates from it, whereas you can put your hand above it, 5 feet above it, and you can still feel heat coming off of it. You start to store tension, and tension needs a place to escape, ladies and gentlemen, and it escapes through your energy field. And the Archon feeds on distilled human energy. This energy gets filtered out of your energy field and gets trapped inside of a energetic scaffolding that the Archon ingeniously installed within the God grid. Now, the God grid is something that we've talked about in prior videos. The world around you is filled full of intelligent, living, and aware filaments and fibers, strands, if you will, energetic strands. You can no longer see these anymore because you're brainwashed and mind controlled, just like the rest of us. We've been put into a state of perceptual blindness. Now, the God grid interacts with our energy field. We exist within a cocoon of sorts, an energy field that acts like a quantum vacuum, if you will, and it keeps our body contained in this physical dimension. But outside of our energy field, there is a vast labyrinth of sacred geometry and living intelligent filaments and fibers. I refer to this as God. But these intelligent living filaments and fibers, the energy of the God grid, gets filtered and reassembled through your assemblage point, and then fed into your physical body through your luminous cocoons, the various layers of your energy field. This dictates how much of the electromagnetic spectrum you can interact with. The dissolution, if you will, or the breaking down of energy through the positioning of the assemblage point dictates how much of reality you can actually perceive. So the assemblage point moves. We've talked about the assemblage point in prior videos. I'm not going to be repetitive. The assemblage point moves based on traumas, etc., and it can get locked into a new position. All of you watching this video, myself included, have had an assemblage point that has been repositioned by culture. And because of that, this assemblage point takes in energy from the world around us in a very different manner than it was designed to do. And because of that, you only interact with a small percentage of your mind. I hope that makes sense. This assemblage point is like a governor on a vehicle. A governor on a vehicle dictates how fast it can go. If you remove that governor, suddenly that car that could only go up to 95 or 100 may be able to go to 120. So we talk a lot about the moving of the assemblage point on this channel. Kundalini tears the assemblage point out of its artificial, unnatural location and puts it back where it's designed to be. Moving the assemblage point is incredibly dangerous to the programmed mind that is comfortable living in the land of the bottom feeder. I don't think most people are actually ready to experience these things. They are highly disassociating, and to such an extent that no amount of words can really summarize it. Where the hell was I going with that? I don't even know at this point, folks. Excuse me, my nose feels like if I twisted it, it would fall off. It's so cold out here. I don't know why I dovetailed into the assemblage point. Oh well. Okay, so we have the God grid around us. Now within this God grid, now this is just a speculation of mine based on my meditations and visions, etc. But within the God grid, because the God grid interacts with our energy field. And if we experience states of joy and elation, it stimulates the God grid in a positive way. But when we're depressed, angry, etc., energy escapes our body in a way that it wasn't designed to do. And the Archon has set up a scaffolding, if you will, around humanity, or around the human energy field, that traps energy and feeds it to itself. Now, a lot of you guys may be wondering, how the hell is this possible? You sound like a nut. What the hell are you talking about? I really don't care if you think I sound crazy. I really don't. I don't have time to sit here and try to explain this system to everybody who asks a question about it. I get so many messages from people that it's just, I don't have time to answer all these questions. Please watch my videos. There's a good chance that if you watch my prior videos, within them there's an answer to your question contained therein. I try to make these somewhat complicated subjects very easy to understand. But long story short, ladies and gentlemen, it would be in your best interest to start doubting your thoughts, to start doing that exercise that I just talked about. That was a very simplified version of a lengthier process that I call the thoughtlessness exercise. You know, the exercise where I told you to go into a room and turn the lights out. Turning the lights off and doing it in darkness has the tendency to accelerate, for some weird reason, the internal dialogue. It's almost like the light, or the lack of light, allows the energy field to rest a little bit, and it allows your mind to focus a little bit more. Because when like the sunlight that's hitting my body right now, ladies and gentlemen, it may be hitting my face. Excuse me, it's hitting my face right now, and it feels incredible, especially when it's this cold out. But it actually passes through multiple different consecutive layers of energy before it hits my face, and it stimulates all those parts of my energy field. So when you go inside under artificial lighting, light has to pass through all of those oscillating energy fields before it hits your body. And this takes up energy. So I think that because when you do this exercise with the lights off, you aren't getting stimulated on those subtle levels by having the light pass through it. And it allows you to put more of your energy into actually thinking or observing your thoughts. And your body and your true mind, ladies and gentlemen, wants with every fiber of your being for you to start doubting your own thoughts, for you to do these exercises. There's a reason why you watch these videos that I produce. If you've watched it this far into this video, there's a good chance that you're striving for wisdom. You're striving to become more conscious or to develop more power in life. You cannot do that unless you do a thorough inventory of your own thoughts. And I even fear, and I don't mean to judge people in any way, shape, or form, but I fear that most people won't take this to the levels or degree that they need to in order to experience a complete emptying of the mind. This is not something that you're gonna, oh, I did it once for 5 minutes, or I did it once a day for a week, and now I'm clear. Get real, ladies and gentlemen. You have spent the majority of your life identifying with thoughts that are not your own, or thoughts that are your own that are non-beneficial to your growth. If you think that you can get your mind clear and empty as fast as you can get a prescription filled, you are in for a rude awakening. The true path of wisdom is patient. It is a very patient, slow, and steady path. In fact, on the road to attaining wisdom, ladies and gentlemen, the path of going slow on this path is considered going fast. If you try to go too fast, you will end up getting burnt. You will end up getting burnt. And what I mean by that is that you'll just overdo yourself. So for instance, jumping into shamanic experiences without getting ready, without being prepared, that would be a good example of going too fast on the path of wisdom. You got to first and foremost doubt your thoughts, and that's why I put so much emphasis on this. Because no amount of shamanic experiences, through the ingestion of shamanic sacraments, after those wear off, you're going to be back to square one. And square one was your mind is filled with the influence of the Archon. This is the first step. It is the true laying of the foundation, ladies and gentlemen. And anyone who tries to tell you otherwise is either unaware of this truth, that they're, on the collective level, human beings are possessed by thoughts that are not their own, or they know it and they're concealing it from you. Now, I tell you what, if you're evil, you can learn to identify with these thoughts from the Archon, etc., and it will actually reward you if you give yourself over to it. If you give yourself over to evil, the thoughts will tell you that you're the fucking greatest thing ever, and you'll actually believe it. This is this is the initial process that gets many celebrities who are obsessed with all this Satanistic crap. And I don't mean like Satan in... How would I explain it? Satan can be looked at in a handful of different ways. Many Satanists are not bad people. I'm talking about the Satanists, ladies and gentlemen, like the ones in Hollywood who believe that they're actually communicating with the devil and they do all these sacrifices and all this crap. That's garbage nonsense. That is such a disgusting thing. And this is, ladies and gentlemen, as I was saying earlier, or just a moment ago, when celebrities who resonate with evil first get into Hollywood, or when they get success with their album, their thoughts uplift them. They think they're the greatest thing ever. Oh, I'm so popular, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. And it fuels their ego. The ego is the false version of yourself. It's not what you think it is. We've talked about what the ego is in prior videos. The ego is the you that gets developed and generated from a lifetime of listening to the Archon's thoughts. It creates a false version of yourself that is possessed. That's the ego, folks. Wake up. But over time, as these celebrities go down the fucking disgusting rabbit hole of Hollywood, that voice that uplifted them at one point starts to deceive them, and it turns on them. And that's why many people in Hollywood are driven insane at 40, 50, 60 years old. It's because they realize that they've sided with evil and there's no going back. And the Archon, Satan if you want to call it that, or Mara, it has them. And it starts driving them crazy. There are certain things that I know about certain celebrities that I'm not going to say, but I'm just going to tell you that possession is a very real thing. And I'm not going to name any names because, God forbid, if I say the wrong thing, I might get kicked off of here. So I'm not here to be repetitive, although I am. I don't intend to be repetitive. I know that repetition of a message constitutes mental programming, and in a world where you've been programmed exponentially to be programmed, you've been programmed to be programmed by thoughts that are not your own. I absolutely am going to get on here and drive it into the ground. I don't care if you dislike it. I don't care. This is a message that people need to hear, in my opinion. So, the motionlessness exercise and the thoughtlessness exercise work best when used in tandem with one another, and I explain how to do these in great detail on my Patreon page. Links are in the description box below. For as little as $5 a month, which is basically like buying me a cup of coffee, you can become a patron, and you can access a Patreon exclusive feed of hundreds of videos. I think there's 1,600 posts, and you can start to learn more about this stuff. That's like the my Patreon page is like the expansion pack of this channel, where you get the course materials needed to actually do the work, and you get to look behind the scenes into my life, and there's just more there that you just got to check it out. You've got to join. I don't know why more people haven't. For some reason, people have no issue buying a $150, $200 pair of shoes, but when it's a $5 Patreon fee a month, oh my goodness, the end of the world. Boo-hoo. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this is what has led to what I like to call the land of the bottom feeder. A man named Jesse Lee Peterson likes to call it the fallen state, and I think that's a great way of describing it, and that's where I got that term from. But I've always, before I learned that term from him, I always referred to it simply as the land of the bottom feeder. What do bottom feeders do? They eat shit. They're shit-eater bottom feeders. Catfish, plecostomuses, you name it. And although those fish are really cool, I think it's a really good explanation of the current state of affairs here in the Matrix. We live on the bottom of we are truly on the bottom of the food chain. We are being fed on by a hyper-intelligent entity, ladies and gentlemen, that loves to feed on fear. In many ways, shapes, and forms, it's like Pennywise from It. Stephen King's It. Now, you've got to use a little bit of imagination to see that truth, but there's some truth to it, ladies and gentlemen. Pennywise feeds on fear. It feeds on the fear of children. And that is the most preferred food source to the Archon. The fear of children, because when this entity, the Archon, feeds on children, the energy of children, it uses fear to solidify the rest of their programming. I hope that makes sense. The Archon disrupts and disturbs the proper development of the youth, and in doing so, redirects their growth and aligns their growth with the Archon itself. I hope that makes sense. That's crucial to understand. See, a lot of you guys watch these movies and you're not seeing the symbolism in them. If you study Gnosticism even slightly, and you understand the basic tenets of Gnosticism, and you go back into Hollywood and watch their movies, I don't mean actually go to Hollywood. I mean, if you start watching movies, I would never want to go to Hollywood. What a hellhole. But if you start watching the movies again, like The Matrix, for instance, there is so much Gnostic wisdom in those films. A lot of the films on the market nowadays that are worth a damn, they're talking about Gnosticism. Or they are very unique films that are peppered with Gnostic lessons. You've got to watch The Matrix, the first one. I highly suggest watching it again. And you also, ladies and gentlemen, need to watch The Dark City. I think it's called The Dark City. It might be Dark City or Dark Tower. I think it's called The Dark City. Which it has Kiefer Sutherland in it. And whether you like to believe it or not, there are things going on in the world just like what are happening in these films. With Dark City, with the rearrangement of memories, you name it. People are shifting in and out of consciousness and having their thoughts redirected. Our worlds are constantly being recreated based on the illegitimate thoughts that we harbor and that are being fed into us. Imagine the creative power that we would have if we actually had sanity and stillness of mind. Our mind is supposed to be like a calm lake, a glassy lake, without a bunch of ripples and waves, you name it. But as we develop through this matrix, the waves start coming, and we learn to identify with the waves. We learn to sit on our boat out in the middle of this ocean, thinking that it's normal to be hit with all this crap, all these waves. Let's turn this around. I don't know why my neighbors can't mind their own business. Let's do this. All right. One of my favorite trees. Hell, I even have a course on alchemy on my Patreon page where I show you how to siphon energy out of trees, and I show you how I do it with that tree. We've got to reacquire energy, ladies and gentlemen. Otherwise, we will never get anywhere. So as you learn to delete old thoughts and create your own mind, that is really the development of the Philosopher's Stone, or the magnum opus, ladies and gentlemen. But as you do that, you're going to need energy, and that's why you need to couple these practices with healthy diet. Eat the healthiest diet that you can afford. As long as you're trying, you are going to create the energetic parameters that will quantum leap you forward in your development. And before you know it, everything that you need will fall into place for you. It may not seem like that. You may think that you're out of alignment, ladies and gentlemen, or that you don't have everything that you need. But more often than not, if you really do a thorough assessment of your life, you have what you need. Now, that's not an excuse to stay in a suboptimal state where you don't have what you want, but until you realize that you have what you need, it's really difficult to pursue getting what you want. I hope that makes sense. It's a very crucial thing to understand. So, let's just reposition this. Got new neighbors. They're always peeking at me. But, as I was saying, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of moving parts to this. There are a ton of moving parts to this. It is not just some simple answer. I'm currently in the process of putting together a set of e-materials on how to do these exercises. But I guarantee you, if you just watch my channel, you can learn to do these exercises without having to buy some e-material. You know, simply go into a dark room, try to sit in one position without moving, and at the same time try to empty your mind entirely. And see how long you can stay in a state of thoughtlessness before the thoughts start rushing in. And take an inventory, ladies and gentlemen, on what the thoughts are. Take an inventory on the emotions that you feel, the images that might come up in your mind. Because this will say a lot. Because more often than not, these particular thoughts, feelings, appetites, emotions, and images are driving your life and ruining it. A lot of these images, you know, all the contents of the mind that are not your own, they're designed to trap you in an engagement of emotional loss or emotional engagement, where again, through the emotional field, you lose energy. And by listening to these particular thoughts, etc., you generate emotions which bleed energy out through the energy field. So don't try to tell me that just because, you know, emotions or the energy field is currently invisible, that we can't actually enter into states of consciousness where we can see our energy fields. You can enter into states of consciousness shamanically, ladies and gentlemen, where you can actually see thoughts. You can see mental activity going into the mind as well as escaping it. Just because you cannot see something doesn't mean it does not exist. You cannot see the heat emanating off a heat lamp, but a snake or a reptile utilizes it for its own well-being, and without it, they perish. In the same way, we emanate a invisible, almost like a heat source, ladies and gentlemen, out of our bodies that this archon feeds off of. Are you a food source? Because if your life is in disarray, if you're depressed and angry and emotional all the time, there's a good chance you're a food source. Now, there are certain power plants, or plants of power, as Carlos Castaneda referred to them, or Don Juan Matus, the Yaqui Indian sorcerer who taught Carlos Castaneda, referred to them as plants of power. There are certain substances as well as compounds that you can take that can greatly accelerate your ability to recognize these foreign installations of the mind and these thoughts, these feelings, these emotions, all of this crap that is not your own, that's circling and swimming throughout your mind and ruining your life. These are the foreign installations of the mind, ladies and gentlemen, and they unpack themselves, and over time they grow and multiply like a virus. There are certain substances, we talk about this on the Patreon page. There is a certain plant compound that has a very potent anxiolytic and almost, I don't want to call it sedating quality, that can greatly it can greatly induce a state of mind where you can, instead of having to sit down to do the thoughtlessness exercise, you can just walk around. When I started utilizing this substance, I was able to do the thoughtlessness exercise without even having to go into my temple and actually sit down. All of a sudden, when I started taking this particular substance, The thoughts and the emotions were just there, and I was just observing them. This substance has the ability to allow you to enter into certain brain activity where it dislodges the Archon's thoughts and your own bullshit, and you can observe it as like a spectator from behind it. And then it becomes really easy to target these foreign installations and then over time delete them. Now, when you listen to your thoughts, when you listen to these emotions, you name it, you'll start to see that there's a good chance that the stuff that you observe, these thoughts, they've actually led to deep traumas. By listening to these emotions, you name it, and these thoughts for so long, you've developed certain psychological impairments based on the constant, huge difference, the constant recognition of these particular installations. I hope that makes sense. So let's just say, for instance, you have a self-doubt complex where when you were younger, you were totally courageous, but as you developed in life, you became, I don't want to call it cowardly, but you became afraid of your own power, so to speak. And you started to develop this thought in your head that I can't do it, I can't do this. There's a good chance that there is within your mind, behind the curtain of the front of the mind, there is a perpetual loop of I can't do this, I'm not good enough, I suck, yada, yada, yada. That's bleeding in past the curtain of the front of the mind and just getting in there. How would I explain it? I drew this diagram out on my whiteboard, and I would really love to show it to you guys. Maybe we'll make a video about that in the near future. But you can imagine, ladies and gentlemen, a piano, right? A piano has multiple different keys. Let's just imagine for a second that each key represents a different thought or emotion, appetite or image. Now, let's just imagine that piano and the keyboard is 50 feet above your head, and you don't even know about it. This is symbolic of what's behind the curtain of the mind, because you don't know what's there, because you've never delved in there. You've never tried to go exploring in that regard. So you have this giant keyboard above your head, and I'm going to try to talk quick because there's a good chance my camera is going to cut off any second because I use all the storage. You have this giant piano above your head, and you don't know it's there, and it has 50 different keys, let's say, on it, and each key represents a different emotion, feeling, thought, you name it. And every 5 to 10 seconds, let's say, a different key on the keyboard is struck in violation of your will. You're not actually there hitting the key. You don't even know what's going on. And when that key gets hit, you hear the resonance of it in your conscious mind. You hear just the outer fringes of it. You don't hear it as if you were 50 feet up 50 feet right next to it. You just hear the subtle reverberation of it. It's kind of like when you drop a pebble in the lake, how it makes a ripple. You're just experiencing that last outer ring of the ripple 50 feet outside of where the pebble was originally dropped. And because you hear the fringe of the ripple, you don't ever question the authenticity of it, because it's so subtle. The poison is so subtle that you learn to regard it as your own thought. This is crucial. I really hope you've watched this video up to this point, and I really hope this makes sense, because this is crucial. So every, let's just say 10 seconds, a different key is struck on the keyboard of emotions, and it's outside of your control. The Archon is doing this, and it creates a ripple. And 50 feet later, because again, as we said, the keyboard's 50 feet above us, 50 feet later, the ripple gently massages your mind, your recognition. It comes into your thought, the idea of, oh, I suck. Or it might not even come into your mind as a thought. It might come in as a feeling or an image. You might think back to a really embarrassing moment in your life. And because you were never taught, again, how to think properly, you were never taught how to have a mental defense system to question your own thoughts, you learn to think that it's your own thinking, your own emotions, your own self-created mental images and stuff. And because of that, you think it's you, and you integrate what you hear, feel, see, or sense. And every time you acknowledge, oh, I suck, or I don't feel good, or this, that, and the other, or I don't have enough confidence to do that, it slowly adds a little etch mark into your confidence until it's dwindled away. So I can tell that this my camera is about to cut off, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe we'll go a little bit longer. I'm afraid that if this thing gets cut off, I'm going to lose all my day or my this whole video. So I'll tell you what, integrate this lesson and you'll see what I'm talking about, the lesson of the thoughtlessness exercise. But again, it works best in tandem with the motionlessness exercise. By learning to freeze your mind and your body, I mean, you can also, ladies and gentlemen, just do the motionlessness exercise. By you trying to freeze your muscle memory, your mind will go haywire, because your mind and your thoughts and your emotions are largely connected to your muscle memory. Your thoughts, emotions, you name it, and how you feel about yourself are largely engaged or locked in and interwoven into your muscle memory. It's kind of like that Tool song, 46 and 2, where I can't remember the exact lyric. He mentions muscle memory, though. That song is pretty deep. Has a lot to do with psychology and purging the mind. We have to purge the mind. Until the mind is purged, we cannot really purge the soul. We cannot really experience the soul. The soul is the most holy, the spirit, the spirit is the real you that is connected to God. And that's something that I should have mentioned at the beginning of this video. I would highly suggest praying for your mind to be cleansed, cleaned, and emptied so that you can see the truth. Because until that happens, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to be stuck. Anyways, folks, I'm going to wrap this one up. It's freezing out here. It may look like it's warm out, but it is far from being warm. I hope that this video can help inspire you to do something beneficial with your health today. I really hope that this video can help inspire you to start doing these exercises, to start doing the inner temple. I hope that this message in my videos can help inspire you to see the rationale and, in not waiting any longer for you to do what you know you need to do now. You know what you need to do. Stop pretending. Stop lying to yourself. And on top of that, I hope that you will go over to my Patreon page, become a member, a monthly member. And I do indeed hope that you will donate to this channel. Things are becoming more and more difficult with all these lockdowns, etc., and the tightening of censorship. It's becoming more difficult for me to generate income with my message. So if you would like to donate to my channel, the links are in the description box below. And until next time, may peace be with you all.